them?
Obviously, the pressure's on. Obviously, you got some guys that are working through some injuries. But I was curious about their Munford, and with Dylan dealing with what he's dealing with.
Right.
Is there a possibility that we can see one of those two at guard because they've had guard in their past?
Yeah, I think
Bear or DJ. I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I think really with our situation, we're fortunate with Mumford because he's played in a lot of positions, right? He's been left tackle, right tackle, he's been at guard, he's been at tight end as well as extra alignment. So we'll see how that goes. But you talk about DJ, he's been playing well. Jackson, like the energy he brings. So I think as we're going through today and going to tomorrow, we'll just try to come up with the best five. But I thought Jordan Meredith did a really good job filling in, and he was ready to play the week before when Jackson was a little banged up. So feel really good about those six gentlemen.
What is Dylan's status right now?
He will be out for the game.
Is there a long-term concern for him?
No.
Colton and I were talking yesterday, and he talked about the team isn't good enough to beat themselves and the other team, but they're good enough to beat anyone on the schedule. As a motivator, how do you get the guys to look in the mirror? And that's a pretty wide swath of opportunity.
Right. Well, some of the stuff is self-inflicted. You have pre and post snap penalties. You don't give yourself a chance, and then the turnovers. Right. We talked about that. Those are two things that I think we really truly can harp on and really dig down in and fix those things. The execution, the details, that's the body work. That takes a amount of focus from the players throughout the week. Coaches putting the guys in position to make plays. And then at the end of the day, like I always say, it comes down to a 1-2, right? Because especially in our last few games, we've come out the gates very strong, which we changed. And in that second quarter, again, we felt with some kind of adversity, and that game hasn't gone the way we wanted in the second half. And that's something we really stressed about this week. The second quarter, and starting that third quarter fast. So the things that we're doing today, we're excited about doing it, and hopefully put it on paper and on the grass come Sunday.
Following up on that, how do you build mental toughness in a team AP to get them to be able to overcome adversity?
Consistency, steady with the message. I mean, I know it gets old, it gets cliche, but the things we talked about from OTAs, training camp, into the season, showing examples now, because now we have real life examples from the game, and just when you look at the rest of the league, because everybody's dealing with injuries. You saw last night in the game on Thursday Night Football. You see it throughout the team that we're facing this week, what they're dealing with. So everybody deals with adversity. Everybody deals with injuries. Just how do you handle it? And it is true, right? We got 53 guys plus the 16, luckily for us, 17 guys on the practice squad. So you're talking about 70 players that at any given time to play in the game. And you got to be ready. You got to be mentally sharp. The focus we talked about there, and then just try not to fix everything, but just fix that one thing. I thought Robbie Leonard did a good job of expressing that today to our team. He spoke, and he just talked about it's a lot of things going on, but just fix the one thing that you can control.
Antonio, even with Davante, you guys are the third youngest team in the NFL. It's gone down. You're probably second, maybe even first at this point.
Right.
When you take a 32-year-old player off the roster, the things that you're saying obviously make a lot of sense, but it's also a very young team.
Yep.
And not to make any excuses or anything like that, but do you think that plays into it a little bit in terms of how guys respond to certain things that happen on the field?
Definitely. Experience is everything. And I think, at least for what we built with our coaching staff, with the experience we got there, former players that's on our staff, those are the reasons that them gentlemen are here, right? To breathe in confidence, to constantly talk, encourage, remind these guys. I'll tell you what I did right now in our team meeting on Wednesday. I looked right at Amir, I looked right at Dylan and says, man, you good? They said, yeah. I said, I'm good too. We'll move on, right? Because I'm going to need them gentlemen later on, and then we'll need them even this week. So it's not sitting here and just pointing the blame, and we're going to make mistakes. I'm making mistakes in the games. We all are. Nobody's playing a perfect game. It's an imperfect game. But I think when you have younger players, you have to make them understand that you're not going to be perfect. It's the lessons of the game of football. We just can't repeat them. And I think the only thing that frustrates all of us is when we repeat the same mistakes.
You mentioned Dylan. I was going to ask you about him because there is that fine line of accountability and not losing a player as well. It sounds like you felt like there was probably a need maybe to go over there and bump the fist and say, hey, I'm all right, you're all right. But how do you balance that line between that accountability and not wanting to let a guy just go into a shell at that point?
Well, we can't. We're going to use him. We're going to use him again at some point. We drafted him, and when we drafted him, we had the belief that at some point he'll help us this season. He just happens to be on his first carry, he fumbles the ball, and I know he feels down. We all feel bad, and we saw the outcome of the game. But I think more importantly is just understanding. And again, I think this is what helps me as a former player. that you're not going to be perfect. There's going to be mistakes, but you got to learn from them. When we do these ball security drills, you got to take them serious. And then we get in the game, it's life or death now with the football. That's our bloodline, right? That's how we get paid based on that football. So just making them understand it, but more importantly, the reassurance that I believe in them. And we draft him to be a Raider, and we expect him to be a Raider and make Raider plays.
Coach, when you look at a guy like Jobe Myers, whether he's on the field Sunday or not, you know, despite whatever he can do on the field now more than ever, how would you say as a leader he's going to mean more to, you know, the receivers in that room?
Yeah, we just talked about the young team, and losing a 32-year-old receiver now. We got a gentleman who's in his mid to late 20s. I think Jobe, though, when you watch him, you really don't need to hear him speak. Just watch the body of work. Watch how he goes about practice, the meeting rooms, attentive, taking notes, doing everything we ask. Like I said, from run blocking, receiving, rushing, throwing the football, whatever it may be, Jobe does it. And he does it with a smile. He loves the game of football. He loves the physicality of the game. And I think that's really good. Obviously, when you lose a player like we talked about, the next man has to step up, and not even that we needed somebody to leave the building, but Jobe's always been that presence, right? You feel Jobe when he's around you.
Coach,
how's his ankle? What's the update with him?
He's doubtful for right now.
Was he gonna practice today?
No, he'll be off to the side.
Coach, what do you think of Trey Tucker then kind of having to be the lead receiver in practice, potentially game day? How do you think he's handling that, and what do you expect from him?
Yeah, well, last week was a big week, right, and, for us, and we just didn't get the touches to him. Shame on us. But hopefully that's not the case this week. Obviously, with Brock being there and being a big focus of our offense, the ability that Trey gives you, we've seen it now in the preseason at certain times throughout the year. The big playability. If it's not special teams, it's on reverses, it's shots down the field. We got to find ways to get him the ball by all means necessary. And the thing about Trey, he's getting closer and closer to really. You can see the look in his eyes, just for the opportunity.
AP, obviously you guys are missing Christian Wilkins right there in the middle, but logistically, how do you guys stop the running game from the opponent?
Just any opponent or the Rams we're talking about?
We can talk about the Rams.
Okay, yeah, no, I think, with the Rams, I talked about it earlier this week, when you look at Williams and what they do up front, very powerful runner, not the biggest guy, but man, he runs beyond his pads. He runs like a big boy. So for us, I think it's the most thing important when you're playing defensive line, like hand placement, pad level, your eyes. Before you make a tackle, you got to whoop that man's tail in front of you and beat him. And if you're asked to do something for the linebackers and hold them off, do the same. But I think the way our defense is built, especially when we got John Jenkins in there, Adam Butler, a lot of this stuff we like to funnel between our tackles and our linebacker, right? Our middle linebacker, Robert Spillane. So just doing your job, again, not trying to replace Christian Wilkins on a stat sheet, but just more so doing your job and doing the technique that we actually do.
When the Rams do have Cooper Kupp, they tend to throw to him a lot, and when they don't, they spread it around a lot. I mean, how different is preparing for if he's there and if he's not, for how different their ball distribution is?
First, we have ultimate respect for Cooper. I mean, just going against him last year in training camp, seeing him work each and every day in practice, and then you watch the body of work that he's put into the league since he's played. Ultimate pro, obviously an X factor in the game. But they do got a pretty good quarterback that knows how to sling it and throw the ball and disperse it to the right players. And they got a lot of speed at wide receiver. So I think that you look at the concepts, and each and every week, McVay does a good job of changing up how he attacks the defense. And I think we'll see that within the first quarter or so.
Antonio, obviously you grew up in LA, a Raider fan, but there was another team down in Orange County, the Rams.
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever pay attention to them, or what was that dynamic
No,
like?
I didn't. It was too far away. And it was no disrespect, but I did play, I'll be honest, I did with Eric Dickerson, because I wanted to play running back when I was younger. Eric Dickerson, Jerome Bettis, but, and they had that one year, I can't remember, it was either 88 or 89 with Flipper Anderson, and they were just rolling at the quarterback, Jim Everett.
Yeah.
They rolled, but man, I ain't gonna lie, I always played, silver and black, but more importantly, it was always that rivalry though, right? It was kind of like, you grew up in LA, you're Lakers, you're Clippers, you're Ducks or you're Kings, you know what I mean? And for me, I was a Raider over the Rams, but I thought the Rams, for what they were doing in LA at that time when I was growing up, they had some winning teams. They did a good job until they left, like 95 or 96.
AP, how critical is it just to stop the bleeding and get some confidence back in that room to get a W? I know they're all big,
Yeah.
but for that specific reason.
Yeah, a lot of frustration in the building, right? Because the last 2 weeks, I think we've seen wins and opportunities slip away in front of our hands by our own fault, right? And I think, as we talk throughout this week, is go and look at the opponent and you look at yourself and say, okay, why are these things happening? How do we fix them? But more importantly, why when we have a lead or we have an opportunity to put our foot on somebody's throat, why are we not doing it? And again, I had to do a better job of getting our guys going for 60 minutes. Obviously, we coming out the gate strong, but not even that, along with the coordinators. And the players gotta have that want to and that desire, right? And like we said, man, just squeezing everything that we got of ourselves to make sure we come away with a victory.
Very good. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Coach. Good luck.